Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Made You Book. My name's Gretchen, and today I'm gonna do a little something different than what I've previously been doing with my videos. So far, everything has been pretty Booker related, and that's just because I started my channel right around the start of Booker season. So that is why it's so heavy with Booker items at the moment. However, I am a very diverse reader, and I do read books outside of the Booker Prize. So I have recently read a couple that I really enjoyed, and I just wanted to talk about them because they're lesser known books and I really haven't heard many people talk about them, and I just like them so much. I just wanted them to get the recognition that I feel that they deserve. So before I actually get into the books, if you follow me or you have watched any of my previous videos, you may know that I'm a very big fan of translated fiction. It's one of my favorite types of books to read. I particularly do like following the International Booker Prize, but even outside of that prize season, I constantly find myself being drawn to translated pieces. And these two books just so happen to be pieces of translated fiction, and one of them is actually from a woman. So August is Women in Translation Month, so one of them actually helped me complete the prompt for that reading challenge, which is exciting. Another thing that you'll learn about me is that I am a huge fan of indie publishing houses, and one of my favorites is Europa Editions. I absolutely adore their books. They do an excellent job curating their publications, and anytime I see a book that's a Europa edition, it is almost an immediate buy for me. I know that anytime I pick up a Europa book that I'm gonna like it for the most part. And I know that their quality, and they always have such interesting stories to tell. And both of these books today just so happen to be Europa editions as well. So let's actually get into the books. So the first one that I read, this is not the Women in Translation one. We'll get to that one next. But this book is, it's called Nevis, and it's by Sacha Naspini, and it is translated from the Italian by I think it's Clarissa Botsford. Yeah, Clarissa Botsford. So this book, I stumbled upon this book. I don't have the physical copy. I actually, I borrowed it from the library, and I've since returned it. But this one caught my eye because it was so short. So it's less than 100 pages. I know that my reading right now is really Booker heavy, so I kind of wanted to fit in some non-Booker books in there, but that being said, there's a lot of books to read for that long list, and I just wanted something quick and, you know, hopefully easy to get through, and this book was perfect for that. So this is less than 100 pages, and it was so fascinating to me. So basically this book, the very first line of this book basically sets up the story of Nevis, the main character. Her husband, they live on this little Tuscan farm, and her husband is out feeding the hogs, and he ends up having a stroke, and he dies. And Nevis is kind of struggling with that whole grief process, and she's not really taking it too well. She's doing some things that are kind of odd, and one of the ways that she starts to cope with this grief is she lets one of the chickens on their farm move into the house with her. She grows very attached to this chicken. It's named Giacomina, and she one day discovers that the chicken is not doing so well. There's something wrong with it, it's ill, and she has grown so attached to this chicken that she wants to make sure that she gets it looked at and to make sure that everything is okay with poor little Giacomina. So she calls a friend that just so happens to be a vet, and this is a friend that she's had for a very long time, and she is having this phone conversation with him. His name is Laureano, and as that conversation starts, the rest of the book is the duration of that conversation. So for the first maybe 10, 15 pages, we're dealing with the backstory of her husband dying and her and the chicken. And then once that call to the vet happens, everything else is just that conversation. And I just found that so fascinating. I love when books are in real time because I find them to be so immersive. This was one of those books where I felt like I was there and I was a part of the conversation. And what I like in it too is, you know how sometimes in movies and TVs, when people are on the phone or having conversations, they'll have both of them pulled up side by side. So you, as the viewer, see everything that's happening. You hear the conversation, but you see the people and you see their facial expressions and you know what's going on in the background. And that's how I felt about this book. It was almost like I was a voyeur listening in on their conversation. And the conversation was not just about the chicken. This conversation was very heavy and deep, and it brought up a lot of old secrets from the past and betrayals, and it was just, I was fascinated. And I just really enjoyed it, and I loved it. It was such a quick read. I flew through it. I probably read it it was probably just a little over an hour. The time flew by, and I was actually at the end left with that feeling of I could read I could have read another 100 pages of that conversation. So highly recommend if that sounds like something you would be interested in. I really enjoyed it, and this was a 5-star read for me. So the next book that I read or want to talk about, it fulfilled my prompt for Women in Translation Month, and it's also from Europa, and that is Barbara Isn't Dying by Alina Bronsky, and this is translated from the German by Tim Moore. So one of the things before I actually start to tell you about the book is I mentioned how much I love Europa Editions. So I talked about I love them for the quality of the story, but I also just want to take a second to give them props for the way that they construct their books. They do an amazing job. So anytime you get a Europa edition, it has like that smooth and silky, like matte finish. I love it. It just feels so nice when you're reading it and you're holding it. They always have, for the most part, French flaps, which I just think is fantastic because they're functional. You've got a built-in bookmark. Like it's great. I don't have to use a receipt or some random thing I find to throw in my book. I've got a built-in bookmark. And then the third thing is that all of the spines are they coordinate with each other. So you're always gonna see the same font. The only thing that's gonna differ is potentially the color. And when you have several Europa editions on your bookshelf next to each other, it looks so beautiful. So props to Europa for always doing a great job. And their cover art is usually really cool as well. And it's typically something that's very meaningful to the story. And this particular photo, every time I see it, it makes me laugh in relation to the story. So this particular book, this book is going to be for any of you that may be fans of Frederick Bachman. This has a lot of A Man Called Uwe vibes. And then also, if you have read his book, Britt Marie Was Here, this book to me is like the perfect combination of those two. And I was just delighted by everything about this book. So this book had me going through all the emotions. It had me laughing, it had me crying, it had me mad, and it was such an enjoyable experience. Now, this particular book follows a man named Walter Schmidt. He is an older guy. He's been married to his wife, I believe, for about 50 years. Her name is Barbara. And they've been married for so long, they've kind of settled into the stereotypical gender roles where Walter was the breadwinner, he was the one that worked and brought home the money, and Barbara was the caretaker. She took care of everything in the house. She took care of the children when they were growing up. She takes care of the dog. She does everything for Walter. And one day, Walter wakes up and he finds that Barbara is on the floor. She's fallen. She's having a spell. And he helps her up and he gets her back into bed, and he has her rest because, she needs to get better. So, she can get back to doing everything for him. And because she's not there to do those things, he still has things he needs to take care of. He's like now the caretaker of the house, and he has to do all of these things. So that's where the book just starts to get so funny. I was laughing so hard when I was reading this book because there are just so many comical moments, and Alina Bronsky did just a fantastic job of writing those in such a comical way that I literally was laughing out loud at times. So there are things that Walter tries to tackle on his own. The first challenge that he has to do is he wants a cup of coffee. So he goes through this disastrous scene of trying to make himself a cup of coffee, and it goes terribly wrong, and it's so funny. And then also they have a dog, and Barbara took care of the dog as well, and she also cooked the dog's food. She didn't just give the dog dry food or wet food. And she's trying to talk Walter through how to cook the food, and he's never really cooked before. So there's just a lot of humorous things that are happening as he's trying to do things that many of us would think are very simple, but they go epically bad for him. There's also, through his trying to learn how to do all of these things for himself, he becomes obsessed with this TV chef, and that's a really nice story. And then also he gives up on the coffee, and he frequents this cafe where he also develops a friendship with a girl that works there. And it's really nice, all of these people that he, comes to know through learning how to do all of these new things. So we're on a journey with him as he's getting adjusted to this life. And as the story progresses, we find that Barbara continues to be ill, and they also have 2 adult children, and they're kind of the voice of reason, and they're trying to get Walter to understand that even though in Walter's mind, he thinks that this is something temporary and she's gonna bounce back, all signs from very early on are leading to this being more serious. And that is, I think, kind of why I really liked this book so much, because I think that it's so relatable for so many people. So Walter he's put into this new scenario. He is so focused on taking care of those things that need to be done and those necessities to life that he is kind of putting his grief and his dealing with the situation with his wife declining on the back burner. And I think that Bronski just does an amazing job with portraying that. And the fact that so many people have to deal with that. They are put into situations where they lose a partner, whether it's to illness, whether they have, left us completely. You could even have a partner that's gone away on a business trip, and you're struggling to live life without them and their presence and them doing the things that they would normally do as part of that partnership. And when that happens, there's such an overwhelming feeling that all of that grief sometimes gets repressed. And we definitely see that that's happening with Walter. And I just think that so many people could relate to this book. And if that's something that you have ever experienced, or someone that has gone through something like that, then this is probably going to be a pretty relatable but likely an emotional read for you. There's also a very unexpected kind of plot twist toward the end that I totally did not see coming. It doesn't really, to call it a plot twist, it's kind of maybe over dramatizing it, but it was definitely a moment where I was like, are you serious? So not only was it heartfelt, emotional, funny, it also had that propulsion of story that kept me going, and I was just invested the entire time. So yeah, if that sounds like something that would interest you, I highly recommend this. This was another 5-star read for me. I am on a roll as far as liking books. I don't think I've had a streak go this long where the majority of the books that I have read have been great. I know that I had one that was not good for me recently, but that was like 1 out of 10. All of the other ones have just been phenomenal. So I really hope that that continues to go. And I'm curious if if you guys out there like to read translated fiction, or if you're familiar with any of the Europa editions, if you have a favorite, leave me a comment. And also, if you would be so kind, if you enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, or comment. And I'm still continuing my booker journey. I'm about halfway through 2 of the bigger books. So there should be reviews coming soon for In Ascension and The Bee Sting, hopefully soon. And aside from that, happy reading, and we will see you for the next video. Take care. Bye.